Jet fuel, inflation, there's so many concerns out there. How are you expecting that to impact the aviation industry in the next 12 months?
Well, I think the positive is demand remains strong. And when we look at, high oil prices, we've seen that before in the industry. Inflation, we've seen that before. If you've been around long enough, these are business as usual challenges. And it's clearly a much better environment than it was over the past 3 years.
But then we talk about a possible recession, and we haven't really, there's a mismatch between what chief executives are expecting, what companies are expecting, preparing for the worst, and actually the real data in the economy. How are you expecting, I guess, the recession to play out and what that means for consumer demand on traveling?
Yeah, I think most talk of recession has eased a little bit. Certainly if you go back 3 months ago, I think there was a lot stronger concerns about recession. The interesting thing we are seeing, though, is employment levels remain quite high. And therefore, I think people still have confidence in spending money. So it's quite different to situations we've seen in the past, where typically these concerns about recession were also associated with higher and increasing levels of unemployment. So it's a different scenario today. And all of the CEOs I'm talking to in the industry remain cautiously optimistic about the outcome for this year.
But different scenario because you think the recession will be shallow, or also because there's still this pent-up demand because we were locked up for 3 years because of COVID?
Yeah, clearly demand remains strong. But I think there's another factor from an airline point of view, and that capacity is not coming back as fast as maybe people had expected. And some of that is because of disruption to supply chains. A lot of airlines are having difficulty getting spare parts. There's delays in the delivery of new aircraft. So we're seeing quite a good match between the increase in demand and the increase in capacity.
How worried are you about these supply chains and actually how long this will last?
Yeah, I think it is a concern, particularly in relation to spare parts. It's pretty much every airline CEO I talk to now is expressing concern, and there doesn't appear to be any near-term fix. So this is probably something that will continue into 2024 and maybe beyond. But we would expect the manufacturers to get this issue sorted out by then.
But so that also impacts, real deliveries of new planes.
That's correct, and the existing or the older planes that were in operation that were grounded in 2019, they're not coming back into service as fast as people expected because the parts aren't there to get these aircraft back in the air.
With China reopening, what impact does that have on air travel across the world?
Yeah, that's been a positive because we didn't expect China to open in January. So if I look at international travel within Asia, last year it was at 22% of where it was in 2019. In February we were at 57%. So we're seeing capacity and demand coming back in Asia. It's a bit slower than maybe people had expected, and I think that's because people remain a little bit cautious. And some countries still had some travel restrictions in place. So it's a positive, definitely, but I expect European airlines to be a bit more cautious about adding capacity into China than the Chinese carriers into Europe.
Can aviation do a lot more when it comes to climate change? Or actually, given also the situation with fuel because of Ukraine, that seems to have taken a little bit of a backstep?
No, I think the positive is that even through the recession, airlines continue to invest in sustainable fuel and make commitments to further, future purchase of sustainable fuel. And despite the crisis, every single drop of sustainable fuel was bought by the airline industry in 2021, 2022, and again this year. So we're absolutely determined. We've made a commitment to net zero in 2050. We know what it is we have to do. What we're looking for is some government policies to support the production of sustainable fuel, because there's no issue with demand. I've heard some people say that they need to see demand signals before they'll build the capacity. The demand is there. It's real. Airlines want to buy it. We just want to see it in greater quantities.